Okay, on this game coder 005, I want to look at loops and how we do something over and over again. So, as I say, a loop is for when you want to do something over and over again, rather than having to repeat yourself and type the same line of code multiple times. You can use a loop. So, what do I mean by that? Well, imagine a couple of things. Imagine, let's start off with important stuff. I got a script tag, end of script tag, and then inside the script tag we can put some code inside a function which we'll call loader, and then loader will get called when the body has finished loading. Okay, so imagine we want to do console.log 4 times, or how many times? Multiple times. 8 times. Okay, so let's do a quick check. Does that actually work? On a file, save as, desktop, game coder 005 HTML. Oh, you'll notice that I'm using something different here. I'm using something called TextPad, which is a text editor that lets you edit multiple documents at the same time. Very useful. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But I don't need to talk about it anymore for now. So this is, let's see if this works. So this is a very simple page that when it loads, there's nothing in the HTML part, but it'll call this function and that should print a log message. So let's go over here and desktop game coder 5. Let's open that over here. Okay. Nothing in there, okay, which is what we'd expect. But if we go to the developer tools and look at the web console, what do we see? The usual warning that means nothing, and let me hit reload. Oh, we didn't get it. Okay. Okay, teething problems. We'll get there in a second. Debugger. Oh, debugger's right here. Okay. Game code is 005. Loader, console.log. Let's see if it actually prints this. On load, loader. Oh, we do get there, and then we do console.log. So that should give us something to look at. Console. Ha! There it is. Oh, my logging was turned off. Can you believe that? Okay. That's a new one for you. If your logs don't show up, see if this is got it disabled. I don't know when that happened. Okay, so very trivial. Script tag print console.log. So if I wanted to print console.log multiple times, I could do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I will print hello game coder 8 times. Okay, let's look at the console. Clear. Reload this, and we hit the debugger breakpoint. But if we continue, go back to the console. Yeah, game coder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so look at here. Both available at the same time. Jolly good. Right, so that achieves the goal of printing hello game coder 8 times, but there's a better way to do it. We can use what we call a loop, where we just have hello game coder, and so let's look at the first type of loop, a while loop, and I'll just type 8. 8. Okay, so what I've done here is I've initialized a variable and I've called that variable count. I've initialized it to 8, and then I'm using a while. A while is one of the loop commands. It basically says, while ever this condition is true, do this. So while count is not equal to 0, print hello game coder, and minus minus count means decrement count, or decrease the value of count by 1. It's the same as doing count equals count minus 1. Okay, but it's less typing. So it's common to do count like that, or also you can do count like that. Slightly different behavior depending on where you use it, but for the sake of this example, it makes no difference. So let's go back to the debugger. You'll notice we're doing everything today in the debugger. We're not writing any HTML. This is one of the beauties of the debugger. You can test out your code without doing very much other than writing the code. You don't need to use HTML to display stuff on screen, etc. So you can see what's going on here. It's going to the line where the while loop is, and then it's going to this line, and it's printing hello game coder. And you'll see in the logs which are appearing below, it only says hello game coder once, but there's a badge at the side. Badge says 3. You'll watch this when I print this. Badge goes up to 4. And basically, as I said last time, to save the amount of junk that appears in the console, it doesn't duplicate the line. If it's the same text and the same line number, it just increments the value in the badge there. So what we've done, we've printed hello game coder again a 4th time, and then we've got to this line, and we decrement count. And if we look at the variable watch at the side of the screen there, we can see that count is now at 4. It started at 0. No, it started at, it started at 0. No, what? It started at 8, that's right. It started at 8, because we're going to go and do this 8 times. So now we're at 4. So we do while, and then the computer will check, count's not equal to 0, is it? And that is true. Count is not equal to 0. That means the computer will happily execute this next block of code. You see between the two squigglies? So it'll print hello game coder again. The badge went up to 5. Decrement the value of count. And again, count is now 2. Count is now 1. So this time, decrement count. Count goes to 0. We jumped back up to the while line, but now the condition will be checked. So we'll check whether count is not equal to 0. Now remember, count not equals to 0 is what would be true if it was going to do this code. But now count is equal to 0, so it's going to say, well, count not equal to 0 is false. I know it's difficult to get your head around that logic, but think about it. Think about it for a few more seconds. Okay, so count is not equal to 0, false, and then, we've exited the loop. And you'll see that it says 8 there, so it actually would have printed hello game coder 8 times. I can make it a bit easier for you to understand if let me go back to the code and actually include the value of count in the print. So this will build a new string that contains this piece of string, and it will add count to the string. So we'll have a new string that says hello game coder :space then the value of count. Okay. So if we do that, the reason I've done that is now when it comes to printing this in the console, rather than printing a badge, it won't print the badge with the number in, because the text will actually be different each time. So let me hit F5 to reload. You can do that on the debugger window or on the browser window. So I'll do it on the debugger window. I've removed the breakpoint, so this time it just executed through. So we can now see hello game coder, and then how many times does it do it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And then the value of count at the side. So that's a while loop. So a while loop is a while loop is nice for a few things. you'll see though it's a bit messy. We have to have count here where we initialize the variable, then we test count here, and then inside the construct of the while loop, and then we decrement count here, actually inside the body of the code that's going to be executed. So it doesn't keep all the loop logic in one place. There's a better way of doing that, a different type of loop, which is a for loop. So I'll switch to a for loop. Okay, I'll do another example that uses a for loop. Now for loop is very similar, except the line where you do var count equals something goes right here. And then you do the check as before. Notice these are separated with a semicolon. And then you do this line last. You don't need the last semicolon, you just close the braces. So, and now we do this with a for loop, and inside there, oops, get it on the right line. Inside there we just have one line, which is the thing we want to execute repeatedly. So this is a lot cleaner, you'll see. It's just all the decision making is, all the loop decision making and everything is here in one line. So this is what I like to call initialization. This is the loop check, and then this is the post iteration. So what happens after the loop has gone around once. So let me just briefly comment this out because I've used the same variable names, so I don't want it might get a bit confusing because there'll be multiple variables called count. So let's comment that out and go to the debugger, hit F5 one time just so it reloads the code, and then let's go to here. So you see it's a lot more compact. It looks a lot more compact. The other good thing is there's less chance of you forgetting one of these steps, you know. It's all together. So F5 again, and it's the same idea. The computer gets to here, it goes for. Oh, I know what that is. It's a for loop. I better do the first thing, which is initialize count to 8. Now we won't actually see. We'll see just jump over this one line because all three things are on one line. So we won't actually see the individual steps. But what it does is it says initialize count to 8, and then we'll do the pre-loop step. We'll check that count is not equal to 0, which will be true the first time because it's 8. Then we'll do the loop, and then what we'll do is we'll jump back to this line, and we'll do the post iteration step, which is to decrement count, and then we'll do this condition check again. So this is only done the first time. This is done every time before executing the code, and then this is done every time after executing the code. Okay, so let's just step through it, and it's, you know, we'll just basically see that it ping-pongs between those two lines, and the behavior is the same as a while loop, but as you see, it's, you know, you've got your logic for, you know, this is a loop. You've got your logic for this is a loop, all contained in one place, and your logic for what you do inside the loop is inside the loop. So this is a bit cleaner than the while loop. While loop is useful for some other scenarios. Let me give you an example of a while loop. Say you have a list of numbers: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. So you have a list of numbers. That's a list of numbers, right? Well, if you want to express that as a list of numbers in code, you have to make it a variable. Okay, and this wouldn't work because, remember, if you assign a value to a variable like we did with count up here, you only assign one value. So if you want to assign a list of values to a variable, you have to put it in brackets like this. I know this sounds a bit weird. This is a new thing, but this is what we call an array. You can call it an array or a list, but you know, this with the square brackets is what we call an array in coding, and I've given it that variable to that array, that list of variables to list of values to a variable called list. So you know what? So just to show that list does actually hold all those values, which is a bit of a tricky thing to get your head around, I'll do this. Contains. I'll learn to spell. So just like we did before, with where we add count to the other part of the string, we can do that with a list. If I do save and I go to the debugger and I hit refresh, we should have seen. Oh, let's put a breakpoint there, make sure it executes. Yeah, we did. I should probably have taken that out. Step over. Okay, so list contains 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Okay, so list does indeed contain a list of numbers. How do you get to those individual numbers? Well, here's a good use for a while loop. Any array has a property called length. And you can do a while length not equal to 0. Okay. And then I can do the list object also has a property called shift, as a function called shift, which will get you the first number out of the list. And then I can actually print the element. So what I'm doing here in this loop, let me get rid of this. Get rid of the for example. So I've got something called list, which has been initialized to an array of values. So it's been initialized to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values. Think of it as a bag of numbers. And when I do this, it'll actually print the bag of numbers. But here, I can inspect properties of that bag of numbers. I can say how many numbers has it got in it, and then I can extract one using shift, and I'm putting that into a new temporary variable called element, and then I'm just printing it out on the screen. So this is a good use of a while loop, because you don't have that pre-initialization step, and you don't need the post iteration step that a for loop gives us, because you're doing it as implicitly as part of the behavior of the loop. So let me save that, Control S, go back over to the debugger, hit F5, and it needs to reload. So yep, now it's reloaded. So if we step through now, F5, see if we hit that breakpoint. So list originally contained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values, 1, 1, 2 through 13. Because here I've already done the shift, so list now will not contain as many values. It won't have that first element. And in fact, if we look in the inspector, in the variable inspector, we can open up list and see that now it's got 6 instead of 7. Length is 6. So as we iterate through this list, we're taking an element out of the list. We're displaying that value on the console. Here we got the badge, because the second value in the list is the same as the first value of the list. It's 1, so it prints it. Then we jump back to the while. We check list length is not equal to 0. So as long as that's true, list length not equal to 0. Is that true? Yes, it's 5. We will repeat the loop. So that's what happens. And then element will get the new value from the list when we do the shift. So element now contains 2, which is the third one in the list, because we're the third time around the loop. And then we'll printed 2, and if I hit run now, we can just basically see each one print out as I hit that breakpoint. Yeah, so there I've switched, so you see all the values. So there I've switched back to using while for a scenario that's more appropriate to while.